Liz's housemates don't see the killer as a freak. To quote the journalist Joan Smith, they think the police are looking for a needle in a haystack when they ought to be looking for a wisp of hay. Maybe that sounds a bit over the top now. Whatever he was, Peter Sutcliffe was not your typical bloke. But the society that formed him was the same society we all had to deal with. That's the intersection between the story of 13 murdered women and the experience of millions of young women across the north of England at that time. That's why my friends and I were so frightened. Statistically, the chances of being murdered by the Yorkshire Ripper were slim. He couldn't kill us all. But Sutcliffe brought into sharper focus the attitudes we all met on a daily basis. We'd all been whistled and catcalled and stared at, or bits of us had been stared at. We'd all been exposed to male anger, sometimes physical anger. We'd all been the butt of the contemptuous joke. The women in my novel don't wear push-up bras or high heels or makeup. But that doesn't mean they don't have fun. They're deadly serious about making a life without men. But there's still a bunch of young women in their 20s. They drink and smoke all sorts of things and laugh a lot and enjoy themselves. And if you read the book, I promise you'll enjoy spending time with them too. That is about as much as I can tell you without plot spoilers. But since I am slightly ahead of myself, I think I will read you that bit I was going to read before. And this is Liz's first job when she's become a CID aide. There has been a body discovered, and it also happens, unfortunately, this is the morning after her boyfriend has given her that black eye. She was waiting on the pavement when he pulled up. The car stank of curry sauce. He hadn't emptied the ashtray for a few months either. Christ, Liz, what happened? She touched her eye and winced. She was going to have to stop doing that. Cupboard door, serves me right for not shutting it. He didn't believe her, and she didn't expect him to. He gave her a look, but didn't ask. As far as he knew, she lived on her own. You been to casualty? It's a black eye, Sergeant. There's naught they can do. Don't it hurt? She stared at him. Of course it bloody hurts. By the time they got to Harden, there were half a dozen cars parked there. D.I. Sprosen was looking very cheerful for 7:30 a.m. She looked him full in the face. Best get it over with. Jesus Christ almighty! What the hell do you think you're doing, turning up looking like that? I'm sorry, sir. Can't you cover it up with makeup? Not unless you want me to look like somewhat of the black and white minstrels. Think it's funny, do you? No, sir, I don't, but there's not a lot I can do about it. Christ's sake, he muttered. Moody wouldn't look at her. But Sprosen couldn't take his eyes off it. He didn't ask how it happened. It was blindingly obvious. But she could tell he thought it was her fault. Just as well he had other things on his plate. The local police had identified the victim, Sarah Jane Gulliver, student nurse. She'd been on her way home after seeing her boyfriend. The parents lived in a stone villa overlooking the park. A neighbour was pouring tea and passing the handy Andes. He'd been planning to send Liz in to talk to them. We'd look a right bloody shower, Henry Cooper ringing the doorbell. Moody, you'll have to do it. Just bear in mind, she wasn't some slag on Love Lane. These are nice people. He flicked his eyes at Liz. Give her a look at the body before you go. Make sure she stands well back. It's all right, Moody said. She hadn't had breakfast. The tarpaulin screen was on open ground, beyond the reach of the streetlights. They'd put duckboards down to preserve the crime scene. A couple of DCs were marking off a patch of flattened grass with flagpoles and traffic cones. Looked like he'd knocked her out and dragged her. Thirsty Hurst had brought his bag of plaster in case they found a footprint. Behind the screen, Francula was on his hands and knees, scribbling in his little book, showing Nosy where to point the camera. Gave her a wink when nobody was looking. Nothing flirty, just saying hello. It was all right, Francula. The university paid his wages, so he didn't have to laugh at anybody's dirty jokes. Nosy was getting in close, clicking away. Tights pulled down, skirt bunched up, Wallace coat a couple of feet away. He must have taken it off her before he... Moody was right. Just as well she hadn't had breakfast. She could stand the blood, more or less. It was when she tried to imagine it. The lass still alive, struggling, seeing the weapon in his hands. "You all right, Liz?" "Yes, Sergeant." She couldn't afford to let Moody see it was getting to her. It was the only thing stopping her from keeling over, knowing if she did, she could forget about CID. She turned round and took a few deep breaths. The sun was just coming up. The grass hadn't been cut for a while. She was standing there a couple of minutes before she realised what she was looking at. "Sergeant, you seen this?" "What?" "Them marks in grass." A line of footprints where someone had walked through the dew towards the woods. Who else was it going to be? Those shapes in the wet grass, they were him. It was like she hadn't believed he was real before. But now she was looking at proof. For once he'd left something behind. Not that they could use it as evidence. When the dew evaporated, no more boot prints. "Sir," Moody shouted, "summit you should see." She knew what he was doing, but she had to give him a chance to say it. Liz had spotted something. "Nice work, Moody," Sproson said. There you are.